Hello and welcome to the Swine Disease Reporting System. Today we're going to cover the findings of the report number 77. My name is Guilherme Cesar here at SDRS Studio.
Hello, my name is Giovanni Travis. I'm at SDRS.
And today we're going to cover all the findings for the month of June of 2024. But also today we have the pleasure of having here Dr. Deb Murray join the SDRS podcast. Dr. Murray is the lead veterinarian and director of veterinary service at New Fashion Pork based in Jackson, Minnesota. As the veterinary service manager for an integrated system with over 50,000 sows that markets more than 1.4 million pigs a year, Dr. Murray has a lot of experience finding solutions to herd health issues as they arise. Dr. Murray has been with New Fashion Pork since 2007, dealing with health issues in swine barns. She will share her experience in the swine industry, discussing strategies to implement during the summer period for pathogen control and elimination. And as an SDRS advisory member, she's going to also share tips on how to interpret the SDRS monthly findings. Dr. Murray, welcome to the SDRS podcast.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
It's a pleasure to have you, Dr. Murray. Guilherme, can you provide us the highlights for the month of June before we go for a deep conversation with Dr. Murray?
Yeah, Giovanni, sure. Let's start with the good news, right? Like for birds, finally, the summer effect is starting to affect our submissions. We see in the SDRS that every summer we start to have a decrease in positivity for birds, for example. But right now, it took a little bit longer to see this decrease. We are seeing right now in the end of June that, for example, the win-to market category, finally, we are below the 40% of positive submissions and we end up with 34% of positive submissions for this specific category. And for overall, when we put all the farm types together, PRRS values is with 22% of positive submissions in the 6 VDLs that we have in the project. But at the state level monitoring, we still have South Dakota and Indiana that are having positive cases above the expected compared to the historical baseline.
So good news there, virus is coming down the detection. How about anti-coronavirus? Any update there?
Yeah, for this we have good news as well. As expected in the summer. We see this decreased positivity for PED and also Delta coronavirus. That right now, for example, Delta, we have only 1.3% of positive submissions, so really low. And PED, the overall positivity is also only 6%. And at the regional level, for example, Delta coronavirus is good in all the states here in the US, but PED is still above expected in Kansas and Ohio for their historical baseline. And also we have like new charts coming to the SDRS in July. Right now, we are bringing the information of PED genotype. So right now you can see in the report how many samples was detected the indel or the non-indel variant at the sample level, as I mentioned. And as a reminder, in 2014, when we had like the outbreaks of PED, two variants were identified in the US. So one of them is the indel variant and the other one, the non-indel, all of them based on the spike protein that we detected which variant we have. And since the beginning, the indel variant were reported as a mild strain that didn't have a lot of clinical signs compared with the non-indel, for example, that was reported as a more aggressive strain.
So this information was shared with the advisory board up front. So what they tell you about that?
Yeah, the advisory board gave some tips about like the PED genotype. We asked them how this information would be used in a daily basis, like the genotyping of the PED. And some members that they said that the strategy adopted is the same regardless of the variant. So if you have indel or no indel, they always push throughout the elimination of this virus from the farm. But on the other hand, some advisory members said that the no-indel indeed is more aggressive and sometimes takes longer to eliminate from the farm. And the biosecurity strategies have to be even more reinforced to eliminate this specific strain for the farm. And also, some advisory members said that some segments of the industry, they had their herd in high, when they have herds in high density areas, for example, they prefer to expose the herd to the indel variant, that is a mild strain, let's say, to have less clinical signs and then create immunity in the herd to avoid these more aggressive strains in the long term.
Very good feedback there from the advisory. How about the other pathogens? Any other highlights?
Yeah, for other pathogens, we would like to focus on PCV3 and PCV2 because PCV3, for example, had an increase in the win to finish sites in terms of positivity, end up with 45.7% of positive submissions in this month of June. But also both PCV2 and PCV3 had a slight increase in the sow farms positivity, with PCV2 having 34% of positive submissions and PCV3 having 65% of positive submissions.
Thanks, Guilherme, for sharing that. And one of the things that you commented was that the PRRS rise has a start to come down, but was a prolonged detection there. Dr. Murray, want to pick your brain about that. What do you think it has been causing this effect of PRRS virus being more active during 2024 and going a little bit inside of summer, where the previous years we see a decrease in activity there?
Yeah, I think the weather has a lot to do with it. We had a real wet spring, a lot of rain, a lot of wind. So I think that may have helped, some transmission. The 144 L1C and the, variations of that being more, have a higher viral load, be surviving longer. I think that is also contributing, right? Because it's there and you can spread it around more easily. And if something does get contaminated, it's not gone in a day. It might still be alive and well, 5 days later, potentially on a fomite or in a vehicle or something along those lines.
No, that's perfect, Dr. Murray. But we have the advantage of the summer as well. We had this long activity, as Giovanni mentioned, for PRRS, but also producers and veterinarians take the advantage of that to eliminate pathogens, right? Because they have a decreased activity for most of the pathogens in this period. So can you share with us, like, how do you deal with this kind of elimination program in the summer? And do you have some strategies to share with our audience as well to eliminate pathogens during this period?
Yeah, so I think it's the same, you keep the same procedures as what you would have the rest of the year, because you know that you have higher survival. And I don't think we can really let our guard down in terms of cleaning and sanitation and that sort of thing. Maybe historically, many years ago, we didn't have to do, the same extent of the cleaning that we have to do now, just because the survival was less. But certainly, especially if we have warm and dry weather, that definitely helps. The disinfectants can dry more quickly. They don't freeze after you put them on, those sorts of things. It's a lot easier to do if you need to do cleaning outside, maybe washing chutes, things like that in part of your cleanup process. It's certainly a lot easier when you have nice weather to do that in. You take advantage again of kind of viral survival. So, we know that time and temperature eventually will work, although it seems like we have to have a longer time and a higher temperature, but it definitely will help. Even vehicle sanitation, you get that greenhouse effect of your vehicles in the summer. So even with maybe not a whole lot of effort, your vehicle is going to be, if there is virus in there, it'll be dead virus. So all of those things definitely will help in your efforts. So, nothing's perfect, but, every little step that you take, you want to have it as good as you can. But those factors definitely do help you.
Oh, super nice, Dr. Murray. But also we have like the other side of the story, right? Like for the summer, for example, we have more maintenance going on in the farm since it's a nice weather, so we have to fix some things in the barns. So we have new crews coming inside, and like sometimes this can like affect the biosecurity of the farm, right? So do you have any tips to share with our audience, like how to deal with all these maintenance crews and like new people coming inside the farm to avoid this pathogen spreading in this period, for example?
I think preparation is probably your biggest asset in this. So any supplies that you need, any tools that you need, any equipment that you need, get that sent to the farm in advance. So then that way there is some downtime, there is some time to clean and disinfect. I would not rely on, disinfecting something as it comes in, right? We know that we need time for disinfectants to work. So I think if you're prepared and you could get the supplies there ahead of time, that's sort of number one. And then number two, I think it's having conversations with the people doing the maintenance so they understand, what's being asked of them, why it's being asked, like what the importance of like why you don't want to bring that dirty drill in, why we want that cleaned. Even sometimes it's just asking what they need because maybe the farm actually already has several items that they don't necessarily need to even bring in. So I think just talking with them ahead of time and understanding all of that, you're certainly going to run into situations where there's going to be last minute things that, you know, you can't prepare for and they need. But I think having a plan for some of that is definitely important. Where am I going to put that to try to clean it? Do I have a dry area that's up off the ground? You know, trying to kind of think outside the box, even sometimes to make sure that those things get done right. And I think part of that plan on your construction has to be allowing enough time. You know, so if your plan is I want to get it done as fast as possible, that's not going to generally be a good outcome. So I think you have to factor in like how much time will it really take for the construction, and then how much time do I need to allow for disinfection, biosecurity, because that will take some time if done right. So I think if you don't factor that in, then everybody feels rushed that they have to get it done right now, and they're going to skip those steps because their time is the constraint. So I think building that time into your plan is definitely helpful too.
Dr. Murray, just one follow-up question out of curiosity. When you deal with contractors, for example, like crews that are not, they do not belong for the farm, right? So they are from outside. Is different the type of communication that you have, or it's kind of the same when it's your employee as well? So can you share some ideas on that as well? Because usually we have some issues when we have like different farm crews from different places.
Yeah, no, I think it's really the same conversation. I think they need to have the same information, whether it be an employee that's there or an outside contractor that's there. I think it's still the same. So maybe you're going to go through that a little bit a different way. So if they have a supervisor, you know, contact them first and kind of go over the plan with them. And then I would always, you know, offer to be there to, you know, if they have questions and when they discuss it with their employees. And I think that the follow-up is very important. So, you know, once everything is discussed and planned, you know, there has to be some level of oversight, right? So when that actually occurs, like, are they getting those steps right? If they're not, trying to correct that early versus, well, this is the last day of the 3-week construction project, and I now realize that they've been coming in and out wrong. So like we don't want to do that either. So I think being there early and upfront when that's occurring to make sure that like we correct anything that's we don't see as being, you know, what we want. I think that's going to be our best bet.
In this process of biosecurity, you have mentioned about the steps, the SOPs, but also the communication with the people and how to keep this process going in terms of the tips. Any suggestion on how that communication should be conducted between the leadership and the employees to be able to follow this process of the biosecurity there?
I think everybody has to be on the same page. So, you know, you have to make sure that the veterinary staff, the production staff, the maintenance or the construction staff, everybody is in agreement. Because I might have one thing in mind that I think it needs to be done. If that's different than maybe the production staff and they're there that day, well, they're going to use the method or what they think is right, which might not be what I think is right. So I think, you know, making sure that you're all aligned and you're sort of have the same goal, if you will, or the steps you're all agreed upon. And obviously there might be a step that I might think is really important, and the construction person is like, there's no possible way we can do that. So then, okay, like let's figure out another option or what would be our second best. You know, maybe it's not the very best, but like it's still better than doing nothing. You know, so I think having that discussion, and again, like ahead of time is a lot easier than when they're right there and you have all these people and they're waiting and they want to get this item in. You know, that's probably not the time to come up with the plan, right? So trying to do that a little bit ahead of time is helpful.
Thank you for sharing out those tips in terms of biosecurity and management. One question that we have for you, Dr. Murray, out of all curiosity, in the last few years, E. coli has been your radar, and there was some change there in the clinical presentation in the field, and you have been one of the pioneers bringing that red light to the industry, say, hey, something changed here. Can you share your perspective of what was this problem and what have you learned and what tips do you have for the industry in terms of dealing with E. coli?
Yeah, so I think like everything, and nothing is ever just one, there's never just one driving factor, you know. So I think this was another case of that where, you know, there's probably some genetic influence over time where E. coli resistance has changed. There's some diet changes that have occurred over time, maybe less fiber, maybe different ingredients, maybe more distillers, but just lots of different changes. And I think that all sort of compounded together along with E. coli changing over time, right? So it has more toxins associated, there's more resistance associated. So I think you put all that together and we sort of ended up with what we saw. And that was E. coli that seemed to not respond to anything, that we had a very difficult time treating. We took high mortality. But what we learned is that we added more fiber to the diets. We, made the diets last longer, so there wasn't such frequent changes. We worked on sanitation. So we kind of did all those things together to try to kind of mitigate that, and has been very successful. So we, last year, the year before at this time, that we would have been talking a lot about that, and now we don't talk very much at all. So that seems like that's gotten much better. And it's kind of been different for everyone, but I think that was the interesting thing, is that it was so widespread over so many producers and even different parts of the country, that it was something unusual to have happen in such a widespread geography.
That's a great feedback. So if today you would have to say for somebody, hey, if you start to look for that problem and start up in your system, look for a multi-dynamic approach, and not only think about one or other factor. Was a combination of things there.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yep, absolutely. And then I think there's also been some effort, and we're still kind of looking into this as well, and to try to understand like upstream, so what factors occurred at the sow farm. And what we kind of learned is that pigs are born, there's something happening, very soon after birth, or even around, in utero potentially, that was setting them up for this E. coli issue later. So like trying to understand what has changed there, and that's still a work in progress. But I think that's another piece of this, is that, sometimes it's not just where you're seeing the problem, is going upstream and looking at a younger age, or looking at your guilt source to really get to where it's truly starting.
So do you think also could have some effect that on the GDU when you're preparing those guilds, that could have culminated with this issue that arise in terms of the E. coli?
Yeah, potentially, yep. And even your gestating sows, that sort of thing as well. So yes, for sure.
Thank you for sharing all of that, Dr. Murray. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, guys, that's it. Thanks, Dr. Murray, for joining us today, and see you guys next month on the SDRS 78. Thank you.
Thank you. See
Thank
you.
you. See you.